welcome back to Nugget Garage. It's D-Day this week for the little KE10. I came in on Saturday and Sunday, like I said, and I ended up taking my boys with me, and turns out that my boys are the opposite to help. So I didn't really get much done. I did get that CO2 stuff wired up, and I did get the CO2 lines running and set up, and I did muck around a little bit with the PID loop and got that working. A few comments from the last video. Yeah, I got a haircut. It's pretty hectic. Where's Chris? Not here. He's should be here during the week, I think. Why didn't I use the new Turbo Smart electric wastegates? Well, the answer is, well, there's two answers. I was going to. I'm definitely going to on my 2J car. Back when I looked at it, the control strategy for it wasn't quite there yet, but apparently now it is. With the KE10, I couldn't really afford that in the first place, so I'm going to use as much as I can of what it's already there. Those wastegates aren't that bad. They're a good tile gate. They're actually a genuine gate. That combined with those two CO2 kits from Golby's, they're quite well priced, so it didn't actually cost me that much money to set that up. I'll show you how that works later. And the audio in the last video was crap. Yeah, I edited it on a laptop and it didn't sound too bad until I watched it on a television, and it sounded like arse. So sorry. I've tried to make an adjustment. I've got a GoPro media mod on my camera now, which is allowing me to plug a lapel mic into it, so with a bit of luck this works. Alright, so I'll get to work and I'll show you the CO2 stuff, and we'll try and get this thing done on the dyno. Okay, so I'm going to start testing this CO2. I've got the bottle turned on. I've got the DPOs assigned to increase and decrease. Now I stuffed up. I thought I had DPO 1 as the boost increase, but it turns out I used DPO 8. I didn't see that the black trace wasn't on the wire, but it doesn't really matter. My OCD probably won't like that later, and I may change it. So you can see if I change the target, it changes the target there. Obviously that's pretty obvious. But if I go into here now and turn this down to 0, it should start trying to match that target. So there you go. I overshot a little bit, but so now if I go back to the target and change it to say 40 or down to 20, up to 50, up to 60. I don't think we have enough CO2 to go over 55. I did a bit of mucking around with the PID loop before, and it's close-ish. I think it's as good as I'm going to get. And we'll jump in the car and just make sure the trans brake. I don't know why the TPS is at 10.4%. It's interesting. Might recalibrate that too. Right, so we're going to give this CO2 boost controller test. So, basic setup so far is in closed loop. It's using the wastegate pressure as the target. That's what I was talking about the other day. You can actually use the manifold pressure, which is what I want to do eventually. Seems like a better idea if you can actually tell it what boost you want and you get it. So at the moment, nothing will happen until 75% throttle. I've set up a target boost pressure over race time. The race time I've set up, it needs something to start it and something to reset it, so we've used the trans brake input state for that. So it'll start and stop the count. I also had to set up a wastegate pressure sensor. So that just uses the standard Bosch. It's on AVO 7. So, in theory, see the race time will reset to 0, and then it will count it out on the release. You can see over here on my little trace, at the moment the target's sitting there at 25 pounds of pressure on top of the dome, and then if I let the button go, it starts running through the ramp, which is a bit of a weird ramp, but it'll test what we need to do anyway. So in theory, if everything works,
If I hold, you see the red line down there, that's the actual wastegate pressure. At the moment it's doing nothing, even though it's asking for less and more and whatever. But if I hold this trans brake button now and go more than 75% throttle, we should start hearing stuff happening out there. There you go. So it's come up to the target. And then if I let go of the button, well, you got to remember too, this thing has a slight wastegate diaphragm leak, so it keeps adding and correcting. We're only talking like, you know, half a psi. Alright, I'll get off the trans brake and see what happens. Yeah, so that jitter is only like 0.2 of a psi. So, and I got a feeling my CO2 is a little bit low. It's working anyway, so you get off it and then it just lets it bleed back down. Well, that's probably not actually a function of it bleeding down, that's probably the way the wastegate's leaking. If I go and jam the output solenoid to on, should bleed it off anyway. Yeah. The other thing I noticed just before too is I have a dead EGT, so I'm gonna have to. I wanted to change them to open tips anyway, so I've got some over there in the bag for the KE10. I'll use them. All right, well that was a successful test. Now I've got to put the front end back together, do that light harness, do that transpan thing. All right, so as usual, I ran out of time. I just went and did everything that I said I would. Did this front wiring. You know, it's all in there ready. I can't put the light housings in yet because basically they don't fit. I've got to cut the backs off them and change the bulbs to LEDs so I've got more clearance. Same with the bumper. I've got to modify the brackets. I went and pulled the injectors out, cleaned them, flow checked them, drained the oil using the prime pump and the dry sump pump. Cut the oil filter open. We had a few metal aluminium shavings in there, not burying them all, so someone hadn't cleaned the cylinder head out correctly after it was machined or something like that. Transpan, pulled that off, put a temperature sensor in it, finished that wiring. Haven't done the transmission line pressure solenoid sensor yet. There was a little bit of clutch material in the pan, but probably nothing to worry about. There's also about 8.5 litres of fluid in there for some reason, which probably explains why when I first got this going it was spewing out trans fluid out the breather. Anyway, we'll put it on the dyno and we'll see what falls off. Alright, it's the next day. I got the car on the dyno last night, did a couple of little runs. sort of just a bit of a sneak up just to make sure I could actually video something for you today. And I found out that the wastegate springs, as expected, are quite large. So I've come in early this morning to pull that out. Hopefully I can get some video before all the work shows up. The fabrication area. Dave's brought down all of his bling. Pretty excited actually. We've got heaps of new machinery. Should be able to make lots more jiggers. The guys next door, the Pine Football guys, legends, they've gone and made him a stone bench top already. They're going to make me another one over here. I'm going to have just like an engine assembly bench. And it's a KE10 seat bench. Had a few tunes on this week. I've got Gary going. The RX2, someone asked about that. That's a friend of mine's car. He's actually painting my Corolla. So we did the manifold and exhaust and a few other things on it. I've got to get it running for him. We had an FT in for a tune. It doesn't have a wastegate flap mod, so it boost spiked. This thing's nearly ready for a tune. Just got to do the fuel pump. And here we are. So now I'm going to have to jack this up and I'll try and get the two wastegates off and try and pull some springs out. What could possibly go wrong? So the answer to the how many springs has it got in it? All of it. It's kind of what I was seeing on the first pull on the dyno. It made 28 pound of boost at like 5,800 revs, and it was heading for the moon. Alright, well I'll pull the other gate off and get this swapped over and get back onto the dyno.
well, there you have it. That wasn't that chaotic at all, really. The biggest problem I had was getting the car on and off the dyno. It absolute nightmare to get those tyres out from under those guards. The diff won't fall down far enough, and yeah, I'm going to have to shorten the studs or something. The end of rules say, or the IHRA rules say, that the actual studs have to protrude past the face of the wheel more than the diameter of the stud, not 50 mil like they are. So once they're cut down, that won't be a bigger issue. The car itself was fine. Everything stayed cool. All the pressures were good. The only thing I had problems with was a little bit of RFI, a little bit of noise from the coils and a few of the sensors. So I'm going to have to try and figure out how to filter that out. After I changed those gate springs, we ended up at about 7 pounds of boost. I think 3 pounds of CO2 pressure took that to 12 pounds of boost, which is what that last pull was, to about 7,500. That's not representative of what it'll do. That's, in fact, shows me that it's probably going to make power to 9,000. It's still well and truly on the climb at 7.5. Pretty stoked with it, actually. It's a little bit vibrating, like 3RZs in the car, but pretty keen now. Next week we'll go and get a drum of methanol, and we'll put some boost in it and see if we can make some fire and some power and stuff. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next week.